Good morning, everyone. I know it's 11 o'clock. We'll just give a few more minutes to our panelists to arrive and for perhaps a few more people to trickle in. So thank you for your patience. So you'll talk about what these are and people, you will promote this in your speech, right?
Okay.
Should learn all about privacy. Very important.
Oh, yes. Very interested. Because we are starting to talk about it.
Really?
Yeah. Data privacy protection. Oh. All right. Cool.
Yes.
Okay.
So because he's going to talk about universal. What happened?
You've lost it. Oh no, it's cute.
Good morning. Here we are again.
I know. I was going to say tomorrow we should stop doing this.
And they always plays us together. You notice that?
Okay, next
I
time.
know, it's a very small
Yeah.
email application. It's not a big one, like. Yeah, it's fine.
You know, we tried to do that one year. Wasn't it last year? Yeah, we had a discussion at the MSG, but I don't. Yes. Me.
I think on the list, but yeah. Yeah, that's what we did. Now you
Someone
could
made
have
an executive
responded.
decision.
Yeah, yeah. Put Satish at the end because I don't. Yeah, well, I just want Satish. There's an IDN thing. Yeah.
It's warm in here.
An hour.
Okay, we'll make a start. Thank you for attending this session. For those of you who may not be aware, the AP Star community, as we call it, is a loose coalition, I suppose that's the best way I could describe it, of various organizations that work in the Asia-Pacific region. It's been around for several years now. And typically what happens, the group meets, again, informally to some extent, at various events around the region. For example, when there are APNIC or APrICOT meetings, there's usually a meeting that's scheduled. In some previous discussions, it was thought that it would make sense to talk a little bit about what AP Star is at the regional IGF as well, just to give people an understanding of what we as this coalition of organizations do. Now, we don't make any decisions, we don't do anything as such, but it's just a great platform for us to exchange information, what we're doing, what we've done, what's coming up, and perhaps find some mutual areas of interest that we can cooperate and collaborate on. It's been a fairly successful format, and it's been running, as I said, for several years now. So the purpose of this session is to just give you basically a sampling of the sort of things we discuss at those meetings. It's typically about a half-day meeting or thereabouts. So what you'll see is there's various organizations represented at this table here today with me. And each of them will provide you a brief update from the organizational perspective. So the good thing about you coming to this session is you will get a very quick overview of what some of the, I don't want to use the word leading, but some of our community organizations are doing in the region, what we are focusing on, and perhaps you'll find something that you would like to get involved in. So we'd invite you to please talk to us a bit later. Now, we have 1 hour for this session. We'll try and give 5 to 7 minutes per speaker, hopefully 5 rather than 7. Some of them are running some slides, and after that, we'd be happy to open it up to a Q&A with the audience. So without further ado, can I ask Paul, who's also the current chair of the Asia Pacific Regional IGF, to speak a little bit. Thank you, Paul.
Sure. Hello. Hi everyone. Thank you very much for coming, and thanks for your interest in this this session. My name's Paul. I'm the head of APrIGF, and APrIGF is it stands for the Asia Pacific Network Information Centre. We are the IP address registry for the Asia Pacific. That means we perform the function of allocating and registering IP addresses. These are not domain names. These are the IPv4 and IPv6 numeric addresses that are part of the internet infrastructure. So if you're familiar with domain names, then the purpose of the domain name system is to convert a name which people can easily remember into a number, and it's the number, the numeric address, which is critical to the actual transmission of data packets on the internet from one place to the other. So the allocation, the management of the IP addressing space is something that is done around the world on a regional basis. So there are 5 regions and 5 regional internet registries, and APrIGF is the one for Asia Pacific. So we're based in Australia, but serve the entire Asia Pacific from South Asia, including Afghanistan, all the way through to North Asia, Mongolia, China, East Asia, and through the South Pacific Islands. So we've got a pretty big job to do, about half of the world's population actually, and I guess more than half of the world's internet growth to come. But just to tell you a little more about the organisation, we're a non-profit membership organisation, independent from any government. Like many of the internet governance organisations, we sort of have been around for many years, more than 20 in fact, and we predate the real boom in the internet and the interest in the internet that many governments and other stakeholders have got these days. So we've been doing this job since about 1993. So these days we operate as a membership organisation. We've got more than 6,000 members around the region, and we also serve another 6,000 or more through a number of regional internet address, national internet address registries that operate in just a few countries. So that membership, directly and indirectly, of 12,000, 13,000 members, includes almost everyone who's operating a network of any kind. Traditionally, it used to be ISPs and telcos and so forth, but there are a lot of other organisations and enterprises, NGOs and so forth that operate networks these days themselves, and they tend to become a member of APrIGF in order to receive addresses to do that. But apart from that core administrative function, APrIGF was actually established in the first place to facilitate internet development around the region. So the reason for our operation as a registry is to help the internet develop. And we've also been carrying out that mission in a lot of other ways over the years. A lot of training activities, a lot of what's called human capacity building these days, I suppose. We hold a couple of conferences every year, which are opportunities for training and networking, education and professional development. Something else that happens at those conferences is policy development. So, in fact, as a bottom-up internet governance organisation, I suppose, we're also a multi-stakeholder, community-based organisation with a community-based policy development process. So, in fact, the registry, in managing and allocating IP addresses, the registry needs to follow a bunch of rules and policies, and those policies and rules are actually set not by us but by the community. So there's an open policy development process which happens in a conference twice a year, and we bring people into that conference very actively through fellowships and other mechanisms of support, so that members of the community can come and participate actively in this process of IP address management. It's at a core, it's a very specialist technical process, but it is fundamental to internet operations. So apart from that, APrIGF has just established what we call the APrIGF Foundation, which is a development arm, which is the aim of which is to raise more resources for increasing our technical training, outreach, professional development, technical assistance activities around the region. And I think that shows to you something of our dedication and our focus on internet development around the region. So there's plenty more that I could say, and I'd be very happy to answer any questions if anyone has any, but I'll pass on now to the next on the panel. Thanks, Raj.
Thanks, Paul. So I'm just following the order that we have listed on the agenda. So there's no other way to do this. So Noel, you're up. Introduce yourself and what your organization does.
Thank you, Raj. So I'm Noel de Guzman. I'm from the Internet Society, and I believe I have some slides, if they're ready. I don't know how to control
While they
it.
do that, why don't you sing something just to...
Okay. Sorry about that. As you can see, Raj is my boss. So I work with the Asia Pacific Bureau of the Internet Society. There it is. And for those of you who may not have encountered the Internet Society before, we are a global not-for-profit organization, and we work towards the open development, the continuing open development of an open internet. And next slide, please. I'm not sure how I can control this thing. Ah, there's a clicker. Oh.
We're using technology.
Great. Okay. So as I mentioned, I do have quite a bit of slides. So I only have 5 minutes, I realize. So we work in the areas of policy, standards, and development. You can see some of the activities that we do globally and in the region as well. We have a global presence, as I've mentioned. So the Internet Society is comprised, is a global community that's also comprised of members and chapters. So the members and chapters are very integral to the operations of the Internet Society, especially when it comes to local engagement. So these are within countries, but not necessarily in India, for instance. We have 4 chapters. For 2017, we have the following objectives. So at this year, we're focusing on trust and internet access. Just to give a brief overview of the Internet Society in Asia Pacific, you can see the numbers there. In the regional office, which is based out of Singapore, we have 5 team members, all based in different countries across the region. So we have quite a spread. We also have 2 board of trustee members at the moment who are based in Asia Pacific. One of them is in Japan and another one in Singapore. I won't go through this much because these are basically what we did in 2016. I'll focus instead. This is the community network. So we have, one of the things we do is that we also try and extend internet connectivity and internet access to marginalized communities, or those who commercial providers deem, uneconomic to provide connectivity to at the moment. So one of our, I would say, key projects in the region is the community for the Wireless for Communities, or W4C. This has been going on for 7 years now, and we're partnering with different local organizations currently across South Asia to be able to empower local communities to connect themselves to the internet, and also to manage and operate the networks. And as you can see there, these are common access points for children. So as an extension of that program, we have also begun empowering women, empowering local communities to be able to use the internet for their own benefit. You can read more about this on our website, and you can also approach me later on if you're interested. Again, more engagements in 2016. I won't go too much into this, but what I'm going to focus on are this year's highlights. So these have been our key activities so far in the region. This year, we are holding several digital accessibility workshops. So we've been doing a great work with the government in Pakistan in the last 2 to 3 years, and now we're starting to extend this in other parts of the region. We've done that in Colombo in Sri Lanka earlier this year, and we're going to do another one in Indonesia. We also have a project, an outreach program called About IETF to promote IETF and encourage local technical communities and local developers to contribute to the IETF So that is ongoing in different countries in Asia Pacific at the moment. We are also holding this year an online privacy workshop series. So we've already held one in Vanuatu in partnership with the government. We're scheduled to hold another one in Manila next month, and then also in Hong Kong. I'll talk more about that in the next slide. We are also releasing, I hope you will be at the closing social today, because that's where we will be launching it, but they will be available online as well. And I think some of you already have 2 of those reports with you. So at the beginning of the year, what we do every year is that we release what we call the Year That Was report, and that's also available on the website. And that would give you a better idea of what we're doing in the region, or what we've done the past year so far. And we did that as well I'm sorry, that should be 2016 actually. Sorry about that. And the Internet Policy Survey Report is something that we've been doing for 4 years now. I think you already have that with you. And this year, 0 minutes. Okay, so the issue papers, just to say that the issue papers are here. The issue papers that you see there are here. Please do feel free to grab some of them. And local engagements, of course, throughout the year. And then we are also celebrating the 20th anniversary this year of the Internet Society. We have a lot more activities coming up, so please stay tuned. And the ITF Singapore. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Noel. Which channel do we tune into? You said stay tuned, so which channel do you tune in?
That's true.
Okay, thanks for that. The papers she mentioned are down here, so if you would like a copy, I can see online privacy, digital accessibility, gender, and policies and regulations for the digital economy and society. There's another 6 that are under development, which we'll be releasing shortly. Joyce, could we have you, please? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joyce Chen from the ICANN APAC Hub based in Singapore. If you could go to my slides, please. So I do stakeholder engagement, primarily in the Southeast Asia region. And I'm just going to dive straight into it. So I'm going to borrow 1 minute from Paul, because he's already gone through roughly what the domain name system is and the DNS is, and I'm not going to go through that again. But what I want to say is that both domain names and IP addresses are what we call unique identifiers of the DNS. And what we do is to ensure the stable and secure operation of the Internet's unique identifier systems. We do a lot of work, policy work, with regard to domain names in particular. So ICANN is one part of the larger internet governance ecosystem. Our friends in APrIGF, Internet Society that you've just heard from, IETF, for example, we're all part of this governance of the internet, not necessarily on the internet, to ensure that it continues to function smoothly. Our community is made up of volunteers, so we are a global organization, and we have volunteers from all over the world coming for our meetings. They come from very different backgrounds, including businesses, internet engineers, technical experts, civil society, government, end users, many, many, many others. So it's really a multi-stakeholder community. I would like to highlight that we are also a not-for-profit. As to where we get our funds from, that's a different conversation. You can always come up to me and we can have a long, long chat about it. But rest assured, we are trying to use your funds in the best way possible to make sure that this multi-stakeholder participation continues on. So our community are involved in making policy. So there are groups or what we call supporting organizations for helping us with policy making. And we also have the advisory committee. I apologize that the words have run. To help us to make better decisions by providing advice to us. So in terms of what the APAC Hub does, what we really do in the region is we help to facilitate conversations and dialogue in the community. We are helping the APAC community to participate better in ICANN, and we're also doing a lot of work in terms of contributing to what we call the SSR of the DNS, or the stability, security, and the resiliency of the internet. So in the APAC region, we do have a special space called APAC Space, and this is where our APAC community members can gather together and talk about issues that are relevant to them and of interest to them. And we see it as like a practice ground for our community members to discuss these issues that are related to ICANN. So the objective is to help to inform community members of what's going on in ICANN, what are the policies, and we have very, very complex processes and policies, and it's kind of to help community to understand better how we work and how to participate better. And APAC Space is community-led, so this year our focus areas are talking about the DNS industry topics, the policy development processes that are still ongoing because they take quite a couple of years to finish, as well as our reviews. So the APAC Space, we meet bi-monthly, so once every 2 months, either via web conference and also during the ICANN meetings, which take place 3 times a year. The next APAC Space web conference is going to happen soon, that's in September. So we've also been very busy in the past year doing capacity development, not unlike our partners in APrIGF, for DNS management, DNS security, and outreach on the root zone key signing key, or the KSK rollover, with our partners in the region. And we're happy to note that Myanmar and Micronesia recently deployed the LRoot server instances, as well as Singapore and Vietnam for having enabled the DNSSEC, or what we call the DNS security extensions. So as I mentioned briefly, ICANN meetings take place 3 times a year, and we invite you to join us. Our meetings are free, they're public, and the upcoming one is in Abu Dhabi. It's our annual general meeting, and this is where our new board members will take their seats. This is just one of the key technical focus that we have for this year in terms of the root zone KSK rollover. It's a bit technical. It's really more for network operators who have enabled DNSSEC. I wouldn't go through it, but there's a line in red which says 11 October 2017. This is the most important date. If you have enabled DNSSEC and you have not updated your systems, your internet might break. So in terms of joining us, we have a number of newcomer programs in ICANN. We have the fellowship program, and we have the Next Gen program. The Next Gen is for youths, and these two provide travel support to ICANN meetings. There is also a general newcomer program. It's really just a structured way to help you to get to know ICANN better. Some of the ways that you can get involved, I don't think everybody can see what's on the slide, but I think the slides are available anyway, so I won't go through it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Joyce. So that very nicely goes into our next presenter's presentation. I should also say Maureen is the one responsible for organizing the session today, so a round of applause for her. Thank you, Maureen.
So if anything goes wrong, it's my fault. Okay, I've got a presentation on ALAC and APrIGF. It sort of follows on from what Joyce has been talking about, because we are the regional, the ALAC is the coordinated body of the regional organisations that represent the interests of end users like you and me that use the internet. Okay, the ALAC is, of course, the at-large advisory committee, and we basically sort of like work in conjunction with the other constituencies within ICANN to basically sort of like provide comments from the at-large community, the end users, to in relation to any policy development that they actually may be working on. Which way do I move that? This way? Okay. Right, so, oh God, I can't even get my own thing down. Okay. Right, so when we're talking about policy updates, I just wanted to mention that the APrIGF, the Asia Pacific Regional At-Large Organisation, is actually quite influential within the at-large community organisations. For example, the ALAC leadership team consists of 8 members, and that is 5 members representing each of the different regional organisations, and 3 liaisons. We have, of course, our regional representative, who is Holly Raish from Australia, but the three liaisons are actually all from APrIGF. So we actually have the influence of 4 members of the leadership team of ALAC, which is sort of like quite influential. You know, no, we're not bossy or anything, but we do have a say. And also when it comes to policy statements, I just wanted to mention that in the last couple of quarters, there have been 16 policy statements that the ALAC has made comments on, and of those, 4 have been where APrIGF leadership team members have actually taken the pen holder role. So that means that we actually contribute to the, we actually do write the statements that actually get passed on to whatever organisation has asked for some feedback. And also, one of the things that we do as an at-large sort of like community is that we are represented on cross-community working groups, which is the trend for ICANN now, to actually have members from across the ICANN community, the actual ecosystem. So you've got at-large, you've got CCTLDs, you've got generic name supporting organisations, all contributing to different types of working groups that actually are looking at policy related areas. And at the moment, I've got listed here the sorts of groups that are that we're actually represented, and they cover a whole range of interest areas. And if there's any questions on any of those, please ask me. Then the The big issue for ALAC at the moment is an at-large review that is taken. We had a review team that came in, and they told us everything that was wrong with the at-large community. Of course, you know, we didn't take that lying down. And so we are putting together a report, as we have done, and it's to go to the board, and it's the board that actually makes the final decision about what actually happens. And we're still getting community input into that as well. And then sort of like, finally, just looking at the sorts of things that we're actually being involved in as a community group, outreach activities that we as a regional organisation, and Satish and I are sort of like representing sort of like this APrIGF group here. But these are the sorts of things that we're engaged in. And one of the really, really important things is in Abu Dhabi, we are having our General Assembly where all the member organisations of APrIGF will be gathering. And we've got 50 member organisations, and we've invited, you know, representation from each of those organisations to meet with us so we can actually look at policy development within our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Just to let you all know, we also have a remote presenter, but I think what I'll do, I'll bring that person on last, just so that we have continuing flow with this session. Satish, 5 minutes, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rajnish. This is Satish Babu. I chair the APrIGF, but I'm going to speak about the schools of internet governance, schools and academies of internet governance in the Asia Pacific. This is a program that has gathered a lot of momentum in the last couple of years. I think one of the first to start a national school was actually Pakistan. That was a couple of years back, together with the APsig, the Asia Pacific School on Internet Governance. Now, let me just quickly present which are the different SIGs and what is their relation with the national IGFs. Now, Schools of Internet Governance is basically a capacity building program. That's the first objective. The second objective is often to nucleate a community of internet governance professionals. These are the two main objectives of Schools of Internet Governance. Most of these SIGs that we have today are national SIGs, apart with the, of course, notable exception of APsig, which is a regional SIG, and MIAC, which is the Middle East and adjoining countries SIG, which is a sub-regional, actually it straddles two regions, parts of Africa and of course the Middle East. It comes all the way till Pakistan, that the definition of that MIAC. So what have been the activities this year? A number of new countries are coming forward to host their own schools of internet governance. Earlier this month, we had the first instance of a school in Armenia. Now, Armenia, nobody's quite sure whether it is Asia Pacific or it is Europe. It is again straddling the kind of the boundaries of these two regions. But Armenia, supported by APrIGF, did a school for the first time ever. They had about 30 participants, and that has been a very major milestone in that region. INSIG, India school, started last year. It's been doing pretty well. This year, we are doing it just before ICANN meeting in Abu Dhabi, which is in October. So we have India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Korea, Taiwan, and of course, APrIGF is the Asia Pacific Internet Governance Academy. It's a program jointly funded by ICANN, APAC Hub, and KISA. And I had the occasion to teach last year in that school, and it has been a really illuminating experience because that school is mostly for young people, as opposed to the other schools which are open for any age category. Now, what is the relation between SIGs and IGFs, the national IGFs and SIGs? In many cases, many countries are too small to have their own school of internet governance, so it's an adjunct to the national IGFs. So if the IGF is 2 days, the school is an additional 1 day for those people who want inputs on capacity building on the internet governance aspects. And lastly, I'll mention a little bit about APSIG and its initiatives. Now, APSIG is a regional school of internet governance. It is mainly directed by Professor Kilnam Chon, who's one of the members of the Hall of Fame of the Internet Society and belongs to Korea. Right now, it has become a much more broader grouping of the national SIGs. Now, apart from running the School of Internet Governance each year, the second instance is just over before the AP Regional IGF meeting now. That school did pretty well. It had good cross-section of participation. Yet there are some places or some countries which are missing. In the sense, I would have liked to see participants from Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, etc. The other side, Afghanistan is well covered. Pakistan is well covered, India is covered and all that, but this side we have some gaps. We hope that it will get filled as we go forward. One of the other objectives of APSIG is to ensure that in the IGF, in the global IGF, there is sufficient participation from Asia Pacific. Currently, in terms of workshops, there is a proportionality problem there. We don't see so many workshop proposals from Asia Pacific. And APSIG is working towards fixing that problem. So they have floated something called an all-SIG group, which is presently mostly Asia-Pacific SIGs. And this has taken on the task of encouraging people to create better proposals. We had multiple sessions in this APSIG on how we can submit a good proposal for the global IGF, which is going to happen in Geneva this year. And that has become very popular with the different national schools as well as the individual participants coming there. And my time is up. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Satish. Winston?
Thank you. I'm a little bit the odd man out here. I'm not the sort of speaker you normally expect to see, perhaps in this forum, but I'm going to provide you with a little bit of information about a couple of points of Pacific context, you might say. I'm speaking for the library sector globally, and particularly not speaking for the National Library of New Zealand, but talking about a project which we have run down there. This is a project, first of all, I should apologize to the interpreters. The text I sent you is going to be radically edited as I speak, so don't do it word for word. in the National Library, we discovered last year that many of our colleagues in the smaller South Pacific Island states were having extreme difficulties in maintaining effective national library services. That is, either services within their national libraries or services across their states supported by or promoted by their national library. And that was for various reasons. One of the reasons obviously was questions of disaster recovery, because there were so many cyclones and tsunamis in the preceding 2, 3, 4 years. But also there always have been underlying problems of development, and there have been sort of incidental questions like staff movements and lack of training, which meant that in some cases the library services in the South Pacific states have really been not very dynamic, shall we say. And we decided to do something, not exactly at the moment to do something about it, but to find some evidence of what colleagues in the Pacific Island states told us. So we obtained some funding from the National Commission for UNESCO in New Zealand, and we designed a sort of questionnaire to do an environmental scan. We focused it on only quite a small number of national library services across the island states. We didn't really look at the territories. We didn't look at the Northern Pacific, except that we got 1 or 2 answers from colleagues up there that we focused on. We did poll PNG and Timor-Leste, although we didn't really consider them as small island states, and they are in different geopolitical circumstances. But we really focused on the small countries, Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, Vanuatu, Cook Islands, Solomons, and we looked at the evidence. We got some very interesting responses to our scan, and the report is available. It's not online, but I can send it to you. If anybody wants a copy, they should give me their details. But basically, the conclusions we found are that library services in the region are given low priority by planners and decision makers. They do not really get the potential return on investment in these services in terms of, say, educational advancement, cultural preservation, and the possible integration of information services into other processes in the countries. And because the ROI is not really understood, then the budgets are low and the status of the sector is low also. And in that case, in those circumstances, we do wonder whether weak national library services are actually able to help the states, the small island states, the SIDS, actually meet the challenges of moving forward to meet the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN in 2030. There are many unanswered questions. What sort of services are actually wanted? What model is the best for the small island states? A big conventional sort of resource-heavy model is obviously totally inappropriate, but what sort of transformative interventions are needed to provide services for national library services for these states? This has to be investigated further, and we plan in the National Library of New Zealand, we plan to work out some actions which will help us, help us find answers to those questions. And one other thing I need to mention, I know it's 0 minutes, but I also would like to mention a report which I can give you some notes about. I'll put them down at the front. This is a report published by IFLA just very recently, so recently that I haven't really had time to analyze it, to read it right through myself. But this is a report called Development and Access to Information. It's published by IFLA and a research organization in the US, and it's going to be contributed to the high-level discussions at the United Nations in October. for planning more work towards the SDGs. The report is called DA2I, Development and Access to Information, for published in 2017. And as I say, it's very interesting. It's relevant to the region. It sounds like a big, massive international heavy document, but it is highly relevant to this region, and therefore I'd like to bring it to your attention. So again, I'll put some copies of the executive summary down on the wall here in the front. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll turn to Chet next, a good friend Chet, and we've realized that throughout this last couple of days, we've been on many panels together, and for some reason always sitting next to each other. You've got to stop meeting like this, Chet.
Yeah, we got to have a rule next time that we only be on a panel twice, and that's it. So we have more diversity. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Very briefly, I'm from the Association for Progressive Communications, APC. APC is an old network. We were founded in 1990. We're a global network, and we're a membership organization. So our membership is really civil society organizations, and our focus is pretty much around looking at internet, human rights, and development. So it's quite broad, but to But to just break that down, to make it a little bit more understandable. So we focus on 4 areas. One, we do a lot of knowledge building and research, looking at different issues, our priority issues. Number 2, we do a lot of advocacy around policies in internet. We also work on movement building, which is bringing together different civil society organizations to build a movement, and also with cross movements that are not necessarily involved in internet governance. And lastly, we do capacity building among our members and also our partners. We are in 36 countries globally, about 55 organizations to date. In Asia Pacific, we're in 8 countries, and we have 12 members. We have an open membership, so if you are interested, you can just go to the website, and and look at the membership process. We have a strategic plan to 2019, and we focus on 6 areas. One is on access. So, for example, we work on one of our priorities in this strategic period is around supporting community networks. We are working, for example, with our member in India in bringing together, and also ISOC, bringing together community networks to look at strengthening the network. Secondly, in relation to rights, a lot of our work is in terms of very urgent issues around freedom of expression, freedom of assembly. We also have introduced in the last 2 years the notion of using the economic, cultural, social rights to frame issues of access, for example, cultural traditions, etc. And we did have a workshop here. We also try and connect what's happening nationally to global processes and even regional. So, for example, we bring our members, partners to the Human Rights Commission. We use these processes to support what's going on in countries. Thirdly, one of our priorities is a feminist internet. So it really is something that we've introduced in this space. So it's really looking at what is a feminist internet in relation to principles as well as values, but also in relation to looking at evidence building around what are the issues and problems that women and even other communities face. So, for example, sexual rights, how does that relate to the internet? Is it relevant? So in a sense, what we bring together, what we try to bring here is movement building around the communities that we feel are very important to be part of the internet governance space. And fourth is governance itself, internet governance. So, for example, we are in APrIGF, we are in all the different internet governance processes regionally and also the global processes itself. We bring marginalized, we bring people and organizations who are not necessarily part of the governance process, and we make sure that we extend that participation. So every regional IGF, we try to bring in women's rights activists, sexual rights activists, activists who may not participate in the space generally, but we know that it's important for them. We also have a publication called the Global Information Society Watch, and it really is around monitoring a lot of the different issues in different countries. So for example, last year it was on economic, cultural, social rights, but this year it's actually around national and regional IGF. So it's looking at outcomes of the NRIs and also looking at what would be, how to improve the processes. The fifth is capacity building. So for example, we do a lot, we develop materials around how do you look at internet rights as human rights, how then would you, we train or build capacity among human rights defenders. And I'm gonna plug, this is a plug. So we are organizing with our member Engage Media and a few other organizations in the region, Coconut. So it's a play on coconut because it's really a symbol in the region. And it is a digital rights camp. It's from August 22 to 26, and it's going to happen in Indonesia. We want to bring about 75 people, activists in the region, and it's a peer learning camp. You can still, if you're interested, you can still apply until August 10. So we're doing that in October. And finally, strengthening the community that our community, when we say APC community, it involves not only our members, but also our partners. So we convene different meetings where we discuss issues and we look at direction. We try to build that among our members. We also have a grants program for our members, which we started 2 years ago. So it's really trying to provide that resources so to build and strengthen local organizations as well. So basically, that's who we are, and thanks for inviting us to participate in the APC Star. So I guess we can put a star in in APC Star now.
Okay, thanks, Chad. So we have just one more speaker left who's joining us remotely. Couldn't be here this week. And my wonderful support staff tell me that he is online. So could we queue him up? Nurul, if you can hear me, you have 5 minutes, please, for your presentation.
Alright, thank you. I hope everyone can hear me fine. So, thank you for having us. My name is Salwani, and I'm representing Asia Pacific.
Okay, I'm not sure what's happening.
I don't think it's my slide.
Is he perhaps speaking, but the audio is not clear? Is that what we are experiencing?
Okay, sorry.
We hear voices.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me now?
It's an alien.
Yeah, Nurul, I'm sorry, but the audio is really bad. The connection is really bad, so I think we'll have to let this one rest this time around, and perhaps we can put your slides and comments up on the website. So if I could ask my support team to cut the feed, please, and we'll go back to the room. Okay, thanks. Okay, sorry about that, folks. Yes, technology sometimes does not work as well as we hope it to. It's a work in progress. Okay, so that, and I hope that's given you a nice overview of what these various organizations do in the region. I know it's information overload, perhaps, lots of acronyms as well. Even I was sort of scratching my head at a few of them, and I'm supposed to be from the community, so, but that's how it is. You know, it's a motley crew of people doing lots of great stuff out in the region. So I'd like to invite comments from the floor. If anyone has any questions for any of the people on the panel here with me, or if you have some other general question about how we operate in the region, or if you have any suggestions to make, please feel free to do so. The mic's in the middle. No interest at all. Going once. Yes, someone's there. Sold to you, madam.
Just before she speaks, can I just ask a question? How many people in the audience come from the island states?
Yeah, there's two there.
There's two there. Okay, that's good. I thought you were going to come and ask a question. Yeah.
Who, me?
Yes. Good on you.
It's related to communities, so I'm very passionate about communities. Okay, so I'm going to read it because otherwise I'll lose the thoughts. Usually I do that. So community networks is quite ambitious. There's various communities that are still living in rural and remote areas who are struggling to have internet connectivity. Now, I know that's a sort of a specific problem, but I'm not trying to get you to fix that. Also, some urban citizens who cannot afford to pay for internet services. That's a big issue, and again, I said that I'm not trying to get you to fix that. What I would like to say is that when we talk about community engagement, we need to focus on the various subgroups and sector. For example, persons with disability, and young rural youths, agriculture farmers, fishermen. Some of our communities are connected to the internet and some are not. Am I too loud?
No, not at all.
Okay. The ones that are connected have no clue about internet governance, some of them. How can all the panelists support interventions at the sectoral level? Sectoral, by sectoral I mean climate change, agriculture, fisheries, etc. And how can you engage civil societies like organizations such as Asia Pacific Disability Forum? We have a Pacific Disability Forum, and they work a lot on ICTs, but they don't have much clue about IG. Could you just give us some examples? So that's one. And has this group done a needs assessment or a scoping study on the various players and networks around the Asia-Pacific region, and also which networks need attention?
Okay, so this is perfect 2 questions for my friend Chet.
Me? Why? Maybe I
We don't have enough time to answer all that.
Oh gosh, what have we done? Now I'm pretty sure this panel will have a lot to say. Mapping, I don't know. I mean, I think I would suppose each of us do some kind of mapping. Maybe just to answer your question, we did a mapping on gender and ICT, and the reason being that, I mean, we've done that before, like maybe would have been 10 years ago, but things have changed so much now. So what is it now? What is the what are the issues really around gender? So we're doing that. It's a project we're doing with IDRC, for example. The result is just coming up, and we've interviewed organizations in the region as well. So that's one thing that we've done. And it will be around direction in terms of programming. I think it's a useful thing because, as you say, you know, there are maybe pockets really that are not being paid attention to. Okay, I did my bit.
Okay, thanks. So as a more general comment, I think there's lots of us working on little bits and pieces across various sectors and things. So, you know, there's no one organization that does everything. It's impossible, as you know. But I think everyone does contribute in some way or form, and I think if we have individual conversations with many, and we're not the only ones in this region, by the way. It just so happens we are sitting on this panel, but there's many, many other organizations too. Satish, I think you had some comments.
Very quickly, I'd like to mention something called the Internet of Cows, which we are experimenting in India. This is about cows wearing RFID tags and who walk to the milking station, and the milking station senses the cow number, measures the milk, and tweets. That was a core concept. But then we realized that, first of all, is there a use for this information? It's a very, it's a technological curiosity that the cows can tweet. But then we realized that there are 2 groups of people who want this information very badly. One are the farmers who say, when we want to buy a cow, we want to know how much that cow has produced in the past. Right now, you have to go by the word of the farmer who is selling. But if you have the entire information, productivity information of the cow on Twitter or wherever, we can use that. And secondly, there are the bankers who have given loans to the farmers who buy these cows, and farmers are actually selling them off without the banker's knowledge, and they would like to track. But the real angle came from when we realized that Twitter is not perfect for this. Twitter, there's no guarantee that they will keep this information alive for several years. And we realized the blockchain is actually ideal for this. So farmers and blockchain, currently we are talking about a community blockchain. And I've been personally working with fishers for a long time, about 17 years. So we are actually looking into the community uses of even a newfangled technology like the blockchain, and it's promising, really. Thank you.
Joyce?
So I have a comment, and I thank you for your remark. I thought that you raised a point that hasn't quite really been picked up, and I think that's on climate change. I think in the coming APrIGF, and I think it's very, very relevant to the island states especially, the topic of climate change and how does it relate to internet governance. I know that this time round we had a session on disaster and you know how ICT helps with that kind of development. So that would be very interesting, I think, to look into for the next APrIGF.
So I'd also like to plug our issue papers. A lot of those are on these topical issues, including climate change, and there's one on disaster as well that we did last year. So we invite you to look at those. So you had some comments.
Okay, I have just only simple questions. Do you have any idea, like there is a single library in this region, in Asia Pacific region, which is accessed by all, including people with disabilities? And last question is like, for the community, like different associations and organizations, we are listening about your activities. Do you have any representation by the different groups, including people with disabilities, in your board and decision-making process? Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the first part of the question.
First question is like, yeah, for Winston, do you have any idea there is any library service which can access by all, including people with disabilities, in this Asia Pacific region? Thank you very much.
I didn't understand the question. In the Pacific? No. I can't give you information across the whole region about which countries have policies on library services for disadvantaged people, with disabilities. It depends on the policies of individual countries, and I don't have information about that. I think, in principle, if a country has laws about equal access to information, about physical access to buildings, about construction standards which require buildings to have, say, access ramps for physical access to buildings, then you can find that information on the web. There are also, there's also the question of equal access in terms of for print disabled people. And one of the big developments there is the Marrakesh Treaty, which has already been mentioned here this week. That was mentioned in the workshop session that I organised a few days ago. The Marrakesh Treaty of WIPO is a treaty which many countries are now adhering to, acceding to, and that will require them to pass into domestic law standards for digital access to information for people with disabilities. But it's a very complex question. I'm sorry, I don't have more information.
Can I just interject with one very quick one? So I know in Singapore, the libraries, and because I go to the libraries very often, we do have e-books, and we also have audiobooks for people who can't, visually read. So I don't know if that sort of answers your question as well.
So I'm told that we have 0 minutes left. Yeah. We have one more question, so I'll beg for your flexibility.
I'm from the Philippines, and as we're speaking right now, 2 typhoons are now entering our country. I don't know if Chat and me can go home tomorrow, and we'll be staying in Bangkok. Let's go. So anyway, my concern is right now that I noticed that the Rockefeller Foundation is integrating all the ICT resilience technologies for disaster. So they have this compilation of different technologies, because right now there are several solutions in the Asia Pacific, but it is not being gathered. One of our projects in which Mr. Wilson awarded us in Mexico during the APrIGF is the project together with the Japanese, in which we learned during the tsunami in Japan and Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines. So this technology, it involves a telecommunications equipment to be deployed during disaster. After 2 years of studying and implementing it in the Philippines, we noticed that this infrastructure can also be used to remote and island communities during non-disaster areas. So I think it is also a good point that the next APrIGF will give focus on disaster resilient ICT communications. Thank you very much.
So just a very quick response to that. APrIGF follows an open workshop proposal process, so anyone's free to submit a proposal. So I'd invite you to submit something there. I'm sorry, Babu, we're out of time because they want to clear the room. And very quickly to Bhaskar's question, just so that people are aware that the Internet Society has a specialty in disabled needs chapter as well, and they have an online meeting every couple of weeks, so we invite you to look at that. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you to all my panelists, much appreciated. Please stay connected and engage with us. All our information is available online, and we hope to see you again soon, and stay in touch. Thank you.
Please grab a copy of the issue papers right in front. Thank you.
Because it's part of Noel's KPIs.
This is just an update of Nepal IGF. Just quick recommendation only, just 30 seconds I'll take. In Nepal IGF is happening on this August 18th and 19th, and if anyone can join, we are very welcome in this event. Thank you very much.
She wasn't voluntold. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Raj. Feeling better?
Yeah, I am. Sorry for my slow pickup. I cannot understand a word. Bangladeshi man, is it? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Could you put those down on the front for me? Thank you. Just down there. Now we've got the UNESCO thing starting now. Now where the heck is it?